All right, so I'm going to show an example of another layout. This time there's going to be a little bit more things involved. So I'm starting off with just a blank 11 by 17 page. I'm going to go back to my window, view. I'm going to start off by setting up some guidelines that are going to be set up half an inch from the edge of the page. So I'm going to start off by turning on my grid. And I want to snap. I want to make sure my snap is turned on. Snap to grid. Turn on my rulers. So I'm going to drag a guideline out, and it's at the half-inch mark. From the top, it's a half an inch away. From the right-hand side, it's a half an inch away. And from the bottom, it's going to be half an inch away. And in reality, when I'm done, it's actually going to be 3/4 of an inch away, but I'll explain that in a bit. I'm going to start off with that. I'm going to turn my guides, hide my grid, just so I see the paper. And essentially now what I want to do is I want to set up some additional grid lines where I'm just drawing this as an example. You don't have to do this. I'm setting this up where I essentially want to have enough space where I can have three boxes across the top. So I can try to divide this up in a very specific manner, but I'm going to use the tools of Illustrator. I'm going to start by drawing a line on this guideline. And I'm going to make sure that the line I just drew has some color to it, or black and white. I'm going to zoom in just so you can see the line. And now I'm going to copy this line to this guideline. So I select the line, drag it over, hold down Shift, make sure you're using the correct, holding down the correct button to copy it over. And now I have a line on this side and a line on this side. I'm going to select both. I'm going to select this line, and I'm going to hold down Shift to select both. If you don't hold down Shift, I can have this line selected, and as soon as I select the other line, the first line deselects. So again, just make sure you're holding down Shift. You have both of them selected. I'm going to go to Object. I'm going to go to Blend Options, and I want to make sure that I'm doing this by a specified number of steps. And let's see what happens when we type in 3. And go back to Object, Blend, Make. So it works, but I'm getting an extra square. I only want to have a total of three spaces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to go to Object, Blend, Release. Back to the blend options. So instead of 3, I'll use 2. And blend, make. Okay, so now I have my 3 spaces, and when I select these, it makes a special object where now all these lines are a special object. So I'm going to try to drag one of my guidelines out. So one issue that I'm having is my guideline is still snapping to the grid line. Right. Oh, I have to unlock it. So go to View, Guides, Unlock. And it's not snapping to that line just yet. So the next thing I also want to do is just make sure that my guides are nothing snapping to the grid. And I can kind of eyeball this, but I really don't want to. I'm going to drag this off to the side. Actually, I'm just going to delete it. Zoom out a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to take these and make these actual individual lines. So I'm going to go back to the blend tool, go to expand. Now these are actually individual lines, but they're just grouped. So just ungroup them, go back to Object, Ungroup. And now these are individual lines. So now I should be able to drag one of my guidelines over, and it's actually snapping to the path. If I want to see this in a different manner, I can go to my up to view, turn on outline. Outline essentially gets rid of all the color, all line thicknesses. So essentially all you're seeing are really just the lines. And you can see how the two lines overlap. So you know that you're snapping directly to the actual line itself. All right, so go back to view, turn on preview, and now you're back to the normal mode. Drag out another guideline. And now you have these guidelines set up. I'm going to temporarily turn off my guides. So I can select these and delete them. And turn my guides back on. So now what I would like to do is set this up where I have 5 blocks in this direction. I'm going to use the same method, drawing a line on this guide, dragging it or moving it, copying it, holding down Shift so it's orthogonal, moving it straight down, holding down Shift to select both, and going back to my object blend, make. Oh, I don't want to make that just yet. I just hit edit, undo. Before I actually blend it, I want to change the options. Change this to 4. So now I want to make it. There you go. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to blend, expand, and then object, ungroup. So now when I drag my guidelines, it's actually snapping to these paths. Perfect. So now I have my basic grid set up. Temporarily hide these so I can select these lines because I don't need them anymore. I'm going to delete them and turn my guides back on. And now I can see that each one of these squares are all the same. So if I were to make a box, snapping from there to there, changing the color of the fill, not the stroke. And if I were to move this over, I can now see that that box is the same size as that box, and that's the same size as that box. So now what I want to do is I want to have a 1/2 inch spacing in between everything. So I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, just do a single click, and just type in 0.5 tab 0.5. So I'm going to make a 1/2 inch. I'm sorry, not 1/2 inch. I want 1 inch. A 1 inch by 1 inch square. So again, I'm going to drag this over, move this over so that the center point is snapping right in the middle. All right. So now I have this set up as 1/2 inch. My spacing, I'm going to copy this over. Again, making sure that my center point snaps right in the middle. And make a square, except I'm going to notice one issue that I'm having. As soon as I copy this over, this square works out pretty well. If I copy this over on this side, this square works out pretty well. But if I copy this in the middle, I can see that this one is actually a little bit smaller. And it's mainly because I have this set up as a 1/2 inch spacing. I have this as set up as a 1/2 inch spacing. But this point right here, there's not, the spacing is incorrect. So I'm going to delete these. I'm going to keep this as is. And I'm going to change this. I'm going to make a new rectangle, sorry. And I'm going to change this to 0.5. The reason why I'm changing this to 0.5 is I initially made a 1 inch by 1 inch square. So this space on the inside is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to do 0.5, tab, 0.5. So now if I make a square here, I have the correct size, the correct space. Now my spacing here is actually 1 inch. Earlier I said 3/4, but I made this square a little bit larger. But now if I copy this over, everything should line up now. The spacing in the middle is a little bit large, but it's okay. It's okay for now as an example. The last thing I want to do is I want to copy all 3 of these. So I'm holding down Shift, selecting them all. I'm actually going to select this one as well, holding down Shift, and copy these straight down. Again, make sure you're snapping, copying them and holding down the Shift key so that it's orthogonal. So you're moving them straight down. So now I've filled up the rest of this and all my spacing is correct. It's going to go back and delete all these additional squares just to make it easier. I'm going to temporarily turn off my guidelines. And delete the rest of these. So now I have my basic layout. I'll leave my guidelines turned off for now. And essentially what I want to do is just slightly modify this, slightly change this up a little bit. I'm going to say, for example, I'm going to, instead of having all of these individual squares, I'm going to put a larger one right here and delete these 2. Take this one and just expand it over. Make sure I'm snapping to the anchor point. I want to delete the smaller one. If it doesn't allow you to select it by itself, sometimes I select both. Hold down Shift and deselect this top one. So I only have this one selected. And then just hit delete. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to select this one, delete it, drag this one down. So I'm just slightly modifying my overall grid. I'm going to change the colors. Change this one. Gray tone. I'm going to change this one. I'll do the same thing, but I'll just change it to like a lighter, a bluish color. And let's see, I'm going to change these. I'm going to want to change this one to this exact same color. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. So I select this one, go over to the eyedropper, and now these are the same. I'll make these 2 the same. I'll select both of these by holding down Shift and making these the same. These, I want these to be just slightly different, or these, I'll just make these all, make these this color. This one, let's see what that starts to look like. And let's see what this starts to look like. Perfect, something like this. I'm gonna just slightly change this up. I want, say for example, I want this color to be just a lighter color. So I'm going to come over here. I want it to still be in the same color tone, but I just want it to be lighter. So instead of having the H selected, I'm going to make sure the S is selected. So now any color that I pick stays within that same bluish color tone. So I'm just going to go down here and just make this lighter. Just so that one's just slightly different. And then just to finish this, I'm going to just add my name. I'm going to put this on a different layer. I'm going to add my name on a different layer. I'm going to lock this so I don't accidentally select anything. I'm going to go to Text Tool. Type my name. It's already set up in, let's see, we'll do Helvetica New. Light, perfect. And then I will just add my name down here. And then just to have some text, I'm going to add this. I'm going to add one more text block. And I already copy and pasted a quote from earlier. And I'll move this here, change the orientation and the location. It's a little bit large. I can still see that red cross symbol saying that there's still more text in there, so I'm going to have to make this slightly smaller. Let's see if 19 will work. I'll just keep it at 18. And I'm just going to space this a little bit. I'm just going to move it down a little. So there I have my overall layout.